High school football season is over, and we're here to recap the state championship games from last Friday and Saturday in Champaign on the final edition of Inside the Huddle. Brian Chimino back with you with Beth Long of Fox Sports and Scout.com, and let's start off in Class 4A. The first 13 opponents for Phillips, they gave up 58 points in the entire season, but in one game, giving up 49 points to Rochester and losing their bid to be the first public league team to win a state football championship. Final score 49-28.
Phillips didn't really see anybody like Rochester all year long, and that was what made the difference. Rochester came out with 525 yards of total offense. Phillips had a fantastic day too, though, 376 yards of total offense. A lot of times that would win the game for you for sure. The big issue for Rochester, and you could see it the first play of the entire game, was containing Dwayne Collins. As we mentioned, he was the Sun Times Player of the Year this year. He ran 15 times for 154 yards, but he just couldn't get his pass game going. Completed 5 passes for 51 yards. Normally you see Quavon Skanes and a couple of the other wide receivers get a little bit more involved in the game. They couldn't get that going, and I think that was the difference for Phillips in this title game. I have to mention Rochester's quarterback, Danny Ziegler. He threw the ball 17 times for 302 yards and 3 touchdowns. Put it on the ground 10 times for 50 yards. He's only a junior. Rochester's won 5 state titles in a row. I'm sure they will be on the hunt for 6 next year. They kept it close for a half, Phillips did, but they just couldn't stay in there for the second half. Rochester came out firing with the tempo and made sure that they kind of just sealed the game pretty early in the third quarter. Also of note, Corey Warren for Phillips had a huge postseason. He had 25 carries for almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Collins had 2 touchdowns as well. And although it wasn't what Phillips wanted, they wanted that elusive first state title for the CPS, you have to hand it to him for a really impressive season.
And looking at Class 5A, Sacred Heart Griffin does it again to Monte. Back-to-back years winning state championship over the Broncos. And this time it was Gabe Green again, but not running over the Broncos. He threw all over them.
That's what was interesting in this one, is that you could tell Monte's game plan this year was, we just have to contain this kid. Gabe Green, he's headed to Southern Mississippi. He's a fantastic football player, and you've got to like your odds if Monte keeps him in the pocket, but it didn't matter. They kept him in the pocket. He didn't rush for that many yards, but he threw all over Monte. He went 14 for 21 for 207 yards, 20 run rushes for 86 yards. Sacred Heart Griffin wrapped up 2 undefeated seasons, 2 state titles, both against Monte. I will say I think Monte showed up a lot more this year than they did last year. Last year they looked really kind of shell-shocked, like, whoa, what's happening here? This year they came out, they competed, it was a good game. The difference, though, I think, besides Gabe Green through the air, was interceptions. Monte had 4 of them. Sacred Heart Griffin had 14 points off of those 4 turnovers. Could have been worse, certainly, but you don't want to give up 14 points, and really that was the difference in this game.
In Week 7, Nazareth faced Joliet Catholic and only won by 3 points. Every other game was an absolute dominant blowout by the Roadrunners, and their state title game over Lamont, 26-7, was no different. They ran all over the Indians, 248 yards to 87. Led by Nolan Dean, 39 carries. That's a state title record for Class 6A, 199 yards and 2 touchdowns.
And certainly the strength for this year's Nazareth team was the offensive line. We knew that going in. Lamont knew that going in. Everybody knew that going in, and it was still impossible to stop them. One of the best offensive lines I've seen all year long consistently was Nazareth. That was the key for them. And I have to mention Flynn Nagel from Lamont. He was so close to breaking and tying, I guess, that touchdown record for the season. 29 set by Jordan Westerkamp was the record. He was a former Monte standout. Nagel finished the season with 28 touchdowns. He was just 1 away from tying it. He was held without a touchdown in the state championship game. It was very clear that Nazareth did not want him to make any plays. They put Julian Love, who was part of the all-area team, at cornerback on him. The one time that Nagel had a chance to bring in a touchdown to tie that record, Julian Love hopped up, picked the ball off, and that was the biggest momentum-changing play of the entire game. As I mentioned, Julian Love, he's only a junior. He'll be back. Nolan Dean, a senior, though, 39 carries, nearly 200 yards. It was a 6A record for rushing. As Coach Coy said, Lamont's head coach, after the game, that Julian Love interception, it was a heck of a play, and that was where the momentum completely changed for the 2 teams. Nazareth, first state title in the school's history. I know everybody's excited up there, all you Roadrunner fans, and there are a lot of pieces coming back next year, so I'd say probably a pretty exciting time to be a Roadrunner.
Up in Class 7A, Providence, the only Catholic League team to win a state championship, as they get by Cary Grove, one of the better defenses in the state. And they put up 31 points, winning 31-28. This was a battle of sophomore running backs, Beth. Tyler Pennington, 39 carries for Cary Grove. Richie Warfield scoring 4 touchdowns for Providence.
It's interesting because these two guys, neither one of them were on anybody's radar before the season, rightfully so. They're only sophomores. They have so much more time coming back. And they were the biggest pieces of this game. It doesn't matter that, there were 2 Notre Dame commits in this game, including Miles Boykin, senior wide receiver for Providence, senior offensive lineman Trevor Ruland for Cary Grove. Obviously, those 2 guys were big-time players and made some pretty big plays, but sophomore running backs, that was the story of the night. I certainly say that Providence got their revenge for 2009 on Cary Grove when the situation was flipped. It was Providence's first title since 2004. Interesting stat, the Trojans rushed for 62 times. Tyler Pennington getting most of those carries. It was close. The games kept getting better as the night kept going on Saturday. Cary Grove had the ball for nearly 10 minutes in the final quarter. Somehow, Providence still hung on. As we mentioned, Tyler Pennington, 39 rushes for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. Slightly outdone, though, by Richie Warfield, 23 rushes, not as many yards, 128 yards, but all 4 Providence touchdowns came from him.
Earlier in the season, I kind of made a joke about roller coasters and the season going up and down. The last 3 minutes of the high school football season were up and down. It was absolutely insane, that Class 8A championship game. Finally, Stevenson grabs the brass ring. They get their first state championship in football, 31-25 over Homewood Flossmoor. And what about those 3 minutes? It looked like it was over, but the Vikings just did not give up.
Stevenson had a bit more rolling in their direction, a few more seniors, so it's nice to see that group finally break through and be that first state title for the Patriots on the football field. Led by Willie Bourbon, of course. Cameron Green had a decent game. I have to note, though, that Homewood Flossmoor's future is pretty bright at this point. Almost every contributor on that team, only a junior. All the key cogs. Quarterback Bryce Gray went 19 for 29 for 232 yards and a touchdown. He's only a junior. The Harley Hampton twins, Deontay, 17 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown, averaging 4.5 yards a carry. Devontae Harley Hampton, 15 carries for 58 yards, another touchdown, 3.9 yards a carry. Those are not bad stats, especially when you're saying they kept them pretty contained in this game. With 7 minutes left, the Patriots were up by 15 at that point, but with 51 seconds left, Homewood Flossmoor was knocking on the Patriots' goal line. An untimely fumble, and then the game was actually over. The fumble was recovered by James Mahoney.
I think that was the 3rd playoff game Stevenson won that ended with them getting a turnover. I want to say Loyola, Glenbard West, and Homewood Flossmoor.
It was just unbelievable, and like I said, the playoff road for both of those teams, a lot of mistakes on Stevenson's end, a lot of turnovers, a lot of penalties. You saw none of that on Saturday night. And in the end, that was the key. That was why they took home the 8A state championship.
So those are all your state champions this year in the high school football season. We are just 10 short months away from kickoff of 2015. And if you want to look a little bit ahead, maybe Beth can give us some teams to look out for. You just mentioned Homewood Flossmoor.
Absolutely. You got to keep the Vikings at the forefront of your off-season planning, I guess, if you're looking at top teams. But I think you'll see quite a few of the same teams have good starts. Your Bolingbrook does lose a lot of people, but they've got Tough Borland coming back, who's going to be a key cog in that defense, and he was already leading the calls, leading the plays for the Raiders there. There are a couple of junior quarterbacks this year that will be seniors next year. One to note, Oswego's Stephen Frank. Oswego had a good season this year. Got to expect him to keep rolling next year. Libertyville as well with Riley Lees. Certainly he had a great season too. When you have quarterbacks coming into their senior season with that much experience, it certainly can't be a bad thing.
And as we look at recruiting for the last time this season, it's very cold in Chicago. It's also very cold at South Dakota State. TF North D-back Torian Lewis about to find out.
Yes, he is absolutely about to find out. And interestingly enough, he's joining about 4 other Chicago guys, including Evanston quarterback Chris Little on the Jackrabbits roster. But he took an official visit down there this weekend and decided that it was where he wanted to be. Another kid, Stevenson, so now an 8A state champion, defensive back Kevin Pearson picked up his first offer from the University of Indianapolis. I know he was quite excited about that. He's begun hearing from quite a few other schools as well. And I just found out before coming in for the show that Raby's defensive lineman Jamal Milan added an offer from North Carolina. We'll take a visit down there. He's not quite set on when he will decide where he wants to go to school, but the North Carolina offer was one that had been in the works for a while for him.
And that'll do it for the final episode of this season of Inside the Huddle. Check out the Super 25, the final one of the season, on the website. And also check out the YouTube channel, High School Cube News. And we can see all the MVP segments, all the episodes of Inside the Huddle, and all the episodes of Beyond the Arc. So for the last time this season, for Beth Long, I'm Brian Chimino. We'll see you next time.